Scott, what's up, man? First off, thank you so much for joining me. I know your schedule's probably been crazy the last few weeks, but thank you for taking some time to join me. And first off, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing good, man, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, I was listening to your story last week, and right away in the first few sentences, and then also in your book, you mentioned you're from Greenville, South Carolina, which is my hometown. And as a fellow Greenvillian and somebody who grew up here, man, I was super proud to listen to your book and know you were from here and went to high school here and all that good stuff. So it was awesome to hear. And to start, your story's crazy. And to sit here on my side of the camera to think about the things that you have seen compared to the things that I have seen in life is just, it's even, difficult to even comprehend. But for you growing up, man, was law enforcement always the path for you?
No, I didn't. I don't. I don't think it. I mean, I look back and pretty much, I don't know. I was always kind of had that kind of shepherd's mentality, that kind of
Hmm.
livestock guardian dog. I'm not saying I never was a bully, but I think it was very few and far between. I tend to like going after the bullies,
Hmm.
or taking up for people. Who were being preyed on by bullies. But I graduated high school at East Side, and then I went to Charleston Southern. Um, and I went to so I could have 4 more years to figure out what I was going to do. So I didn't know. My psychology was a strong love of mine, so it stayed in whether it was a major or a minor. But I ended up graduating with criminal justice and a minor in psychology out of Charleston Southern.
Yeah, did you play football there?
Yeah, I did.
Got it. I know, like listening to your book, you played football in high school and stuff. I didn't know if you mentioned if you played in college or not. But all right, talk me through it. You get a criminal justice degree. What's the next steps? You think, all right, I'm going into law enforcement, go back home to Greenville, get into the Greenville, sheriff's department. Like, what are the steps to get into law enforcement at that time?
I By the time I graduated, I knew I wanted to be a cop. I started taking criminal justice courses probably like second or third year
Hmm.
in college, and then that became my major. So coming out, I knew I wanted to be a cop, and I uh, I was bouncing at the time, and then when I graduated college, I they weren't hiring white guys. It's just what was going on at the time. But I applied with like four different departments, and then I got hired by Greenville County Sheriff's Office. So, the application process, you go in and there's going to be a physical fitness test, there'll be a lie detector, there'll be a sit down questions kind of thing. But I ended up getting hired at Greenville County. So I left Charleston, I was living in North Charleston, but I came back to Greenville, and I was at the sheriff's office for 5 years.
With you come back to Greenville, you're in the sheriff's department. Like, what are your first roles there? And then how does undercover pique your interest?
At first, I'm uniform patrol. I was uniform patrol for about 3 years, and then I got accepted or made investigator at the Vice Narcotics Unit. So once you get there, as green as I was, the my skill sets of being able to connect with people and doing nefarious things when I was younger kind of helped a little bit. But at that point, once you're in vice and narcotics, now you're running sources, you're making buys, gathering evidence, doing all these things, and you can go to back then it was the South Carolina Criminal Justice Academy. It's still there, but I don't know if they get certifications all over the state or whatnot. But you would go to Criminal Justice Academy in Columbia, and I got certified in undercover techniques, and then many other things to do with like covert type things, and then I started being coached and schooled by my mentors on the narcotics squad to buy drugs and do things covertly. So once I that even as little as it was the first couple of times, that undercover bug, it just bit. I
Sure.
loved it.
So that undercover, like some of your first operations, you would just try and go buy drugs from a drug dealer. Like, what's your first operation?
Uh, the first one was
And were you nervous? What were you feeling?
yeah, yeah. I was nervous on multiple fronts because number one, my mentor. my trainers on the narcotics squad. I'm sure they're getting a kick out of it, as would I if I was sitting where they were. But they're like, "All right, you're going to go down the street here," and it was a high drug trafficking area near the city, and they said, "You're going to drive down here, pull up to the corner, and then the street dealers will run up to your car and they'll ask you what you want. You just say a 20 because that's how much a crack rock cost back then." Well, the thing was, is I was already like 6'4", maybe 270. I didn't look like a crackhead, you know. So I'm wearing baggy clothes and I'm scared to death, and then I'm also scared that I'm going to screw up because I don't want to disappoint or embarrass
Hmm.
myself in front of the investigators who are longer in the tooth.
Sure.
Uh, so I drove down to the area and on the corner, and I pulled up, and sure enough, they come running up to the window like, "What you want? What you want?" And I cracked the window. I was so scared. I think I cracked the window like a sliver. I stuck a 20, like I was, I don't know, putting it in a vending machine. You know, I'm like, "I just want a
Yeah.
20." You know, like, "Give me a 20." And the guy's like, "Roll down the window," because he couldn't even hand me the rock through the little gap that I had. So I had to roll down the window, and I don't know, it was a little sliver, but that was my first drug buy. Yeah,
Yeah, man.
that was
With
and the thing is it's very dangerous. I mean, a lot of times in the undercover world, like, man, buying dope off a corner is sometimes more dangerous than being deep undercover
yeah,
dealing with
sure.
kilos.
With with what you remember about Greenville back in the day, what was, what were narcotic, no, what were drugs like in this city? Like what were gangs like in this city? Like what was Greenville like back then?
Well, see, this is the thing. You can look at demographics for a town and whatever, and it may say crime's high, but I've lived in places where the crime essentially is low
Mm-hmm.
on a big scale, but there's still crime.
Mm-hmm.
There's still drugs and stuff and gangs and I grew up I was in high school in the 80s. You know, I graduated in 89. And weed was, I mean, that was the thing. And then, we even had a smoking area at the high school. But well, I did find out a lot of things once I got on the Vice Narcotics Squad. I was like, man, I never knew this was going on like right around the corner from where I went to high school. But yeah, it was a little bit of eye opening.
Yeah, sure.
But I
With
loved it.
yeah, I bet, man. I mean, I can feel the adrenaline just like thinking about those situations. It's crazy to think about. With reading into your book and a lot of the publicity you've gotten recently kind of started from operations you were in like 2005, 2006, Operation, Roadkill and the Outlaw case. But talk me through how you get from Greenville, South Carolina, then eventually going undercover on the Outlaws.
Oh, well, that's a jump. So I applied with the FBI,
Hmm.
and I got accepted. Well, you start the process. I think for back then it took about a year to get through the process, but yeah, you do phase one test, and you go back for a phase two, and physical fitness, a huge lie detector. I mean, I thought I'd done like four at those departments. I told you they were nothing compared to what I had to do at the FBI. I think I was in the chair for like 3.5 hours in Columbia
Dang.
when I got when I got put on the lie detector. But I make it into the FBI. My first office is New York City.
Hmm. And why did
I
you
was
go to
actually
the FBI? Like, what was, was it more undercover? Or what was your reason for jumping to the
no,
FBI?
so I guess I didn't remember saying I wanted to go federal. I thought it just happened that later in my career at the sheriff's office, but I did find a note or something somewhere that was like early on in my law enforcement career. I said I'm going to be at the federal level in about 5 years, and I do not remember that, but I found the piece of paper. It's my handwriting. So, but like I even applied for City of Charleston because
Mm.
City of Charleston at that time was the highest paid in the state. And I made it. I got hired. But when they told me I got hired, I just made narcotics officer with the sheriff's office. And I was like, this is what I want to do. So I didn't go to City of Charleston. Then I apply with the FBI. I get in New York City's first office. And then I end up on the Colombian drug squad. And because of my background, um, I was already doing like we call them cameos for the squad. So in other words, let's say Los Angeles division takes off a load of dope. It was supposed to be delivered in our area in New York City. We work together. They send a lead to us. We go deliver that empty package to the targets who wanted to receive the drugs. And then, but I might be a truck driver or something like that, like me and an NYPD detective. And that's how it kind of started. And then let me rewind. I'm sorry, because you asked me why did I want to go in the FBI.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I wanted to go DEA
Mm.
because I love working drugs. And one time on surveillance, I was in Southern Command Narcotics, and my sergeant at the time, Sergeant Kellett, he said I was in the car with him, and at that point in time, my nickname was Kingpin. You don't get to pick them; they pick them for you, you know. But he's like Kingpin. He says, if I was you and I was a young man, single, your age, and a college degree, he said, man, I'd apply with the FBI and I'd put New York City as my office. And I remember thinking, man, are you crazy? And then I was like, I only thought, this is how dumb I was. I only thought the FBI worked, um, I only thought the FBI worked bank robberies.
Mm.
So he's like, no, son, they work everything. And then he starts explaining it to me. And I started looking into it. So I applied with the FBI. And sure enough, I get it. And for those that don't know, the FBI has 56 field offices. When you're in Quantico as a new agent in training, you list them 1 to 56 in the order of what you would like. It's insane because I mean you sweat over it, you don't sleep, you wake up and
Mm-hmm.
go, no, let me change that. It doesn't matter. Here's what I say. Let me list my top 10. If you're not going to give them to me, just send me wherever anyway. I think New York was 36 out of 50, whatever, and 56, and and I got New York City. So when I came back from my going away party, I told Sergeant Kellett, I was like, "Dad gummit, you jinxed me," you know.
I'm going to New York.
I'm going to New York, Dad gummit. But it was great. I had a good time, and then again, once I got up there, I was doing some cameo stuff. I knew I loved undercover. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I love law enforcement. I love the calling. I love the oath we take. I love that shepherd mentality, protect and serve.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but I knew, man, it could be the cheesiest undercover movie ever. I loved them. I loved them all. And I got to New York. Then I start looking, and I find an undercover in San Antonio, Texas, and I was able to go do it. I hadn't been certified yet through the FBI process, which is very grueling, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
But I was already working undercover full time, and that's what got me transferred out of New York City. And then I went to the San Antonio division, and then I was once that undercover was over, I was in McAllen, Texas, on the border for 6.5 years, and then I got to move to Tennessee.
With with the training, like what kind, undercover training, and you might not be able to disclose any of it here, but like what are some of the key tactics or things that you like are learning at the beginning?
Let's see how I can word it. I won't give away scenarios and stuff, but
Mm-hmm.
essentially, no matter how the school has changed throughout the years or the certification course has changed, essentially you get some training in class during the day. And then you're going to be put in scenarios all night, every night, no days off. And some of them are going to be very intense. You might get two or more undercover scenarios that night. So you might brutally fail and die in
Mm-hmm.
this scenario. And then you got to get back on the horse, clear your head, and go do another one. Um, Big on sleep deprivation. And it's just really you learn new things every day. But I guess the thing I would probably say is this: if you're still making the same mistakes that you made on the first day, and you're still making those same mistakes by the fifth or sixth day,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not a good thing. But a lot of people think, undercover is acting and lying. And I remember a jovial argument me and my wife had one time. She's like, I can't even trust you. And I'm like, what do you mean
Dang.
you can't trust me? She goes, I mean, it's kind of jovial, but she's like, you're an undercover with the FBI. You've been trained to lie. I said, they don't train you how to lie. I said, you've been lying since you were born. I'm
Yeah.
like, but for me, I always stayed close to who I am, really,
Mm-hmm.
in real life. And that's why my skill set did not lead me to Wall Street or to a high dollar yacht or to, embezzlement and high level
Sure.
whatever security fraud and stuff like that. I'm in the backwoods. I'm on motorcycles. I'm with gangs. I
Yep.
get hired to murder people, stuff like that. That's what my skill set led me to.
Yeah, man. If I didn't hadn't known you or looked into you and I saw you like, man, he probably rides a motorcycle. He's he's from the
Yeah.
country
Shock.
somewhere.
Shocker. Yeah.
With your
Yeah.
first few years on the border, what were you doing at the border? And what was the border like back then?
It was wild. It was wild. It still is wild.
Hmm.
Um, I got down there and I immediately got on the drug squad. But somewhere shortly after being on the drug squad, there was some management things going on there at the office I was at because it's like a satellite office. So like you're in South Carolina. Columbia is the headquarters FBI office,
Hmm.
but they have satellite offices. They've got Charleston, they've got Greenville, and other places like that, Spartanburg. So I was in a satellite office down in McAllen. But I started working drugs, or continued really because I was already working drugs,
Hmm.
working that on the border. And then this whole new flavor came in of special interest alien smuggling. So in other words, we're not just working alien smuggling. We're not working undocumented aliens coming into the United States. What we're working
Sure.
is special interests. So like they're coming from threat countries. It's some bad actors that
Interesting.
we're looking for those. But it's still the same game. It's you're still dealing with the same cartel. And instead of this organization you're looking at, instead of moving drugs, they're moving people.
And are those
And
people coming in to cause damage to like what are these?
some are. I
Yeah,
mean, I know for sure we've caught some that are, but some are just
sure.
sad humanitarian stories. You know, you see
Yeah.
somebody, at least when I've spent so many hours in the Falfurrias checkpoint, the McAllen station, the Rio Grande station,
Mm.
the Hebronville station, I mean, hours, sometimes days. Um, but it was wild. So I'm
Yeah.
working that. And then, also on my squad as a case agent, like we were working violent crime and stuff. So you get the extortions and the kidnappings every week back
Mm.
then. But because it was a different rule, they had a different leader of the Gulf Cartel. And even though it was very violent and they do not value life like we do, there was still some kind of order of procedure. You know,
Sure.
it's like, hey, once the FBI's got this person, we now got a case. Now we're working through our people to your people to try to get this person
Yeah.
released back. That's kind of how it went.
I was interested to hear, like when you're an FBI agent, you're also undercover, but you're also working as a case agent a ton,
Mhm.
almost the entire time. Are you working the same case you're on, or are you also working separate cases?
No, I'm definitely separate cases, and preferably, well, yeah. If you, I'll say it like this: on a state and local level, you're in Greenville County Sheriff's Office. You're only going to work Greenville County.
Hmm.
That things may have changed because I have heard of where if you're somebody who's undercover, maybe Charleston County has you come down and do some buys. That's what I was hoping would happen back in the 90s when I was doing it. But if I am if I live in McAllen, which is where I lived, and I'm working all these cases when I was in the Outlaws. Well, I said I lived in McAllen because that was my story,
Hmm.
but I didn't work the outlaw. There's no Outlaws in McAllen, so I would fly to another town and work that case as an undercover for case agents who were running that. Then I would come back and operate my own cases.
Got it. With you mentioned something about sleep deprivation, and I listening to your story, I don't know how you got any sleep doing a lot of the things you were doing with the outlaw case. How do you get pulled into that? And like you said, you're in McAllen, Texas. There's not any outlaws in Texas, so now you're flying back and forth, doing these, doing the operation. But how do you get pulled into the outlaw case?
So by the time that one was coming around in my career, I'd already worked a bunch of undercover. I mean, again, starting at the sheriff's office,
Hmm.
so at least 2 years of that, several years in the FBI, doing things that full-time undercover that got me transferred, and a few other cases. And then I can't remember if somebody called me and told me that they were doing a case up in Massachusetts, or I saw an email looking for somebody. But I called and said, I basically said, hey, I'm interested.
Hmm.
And I don't know how many undercovers they interviewed, but they picked me. And
Hmm.
now we're going up there. Now you're like, okay, that case team has been, or squad has been working this case for a year or more. They've
Hmm.
been gathering evidence and building things, and now they're at a point where they're like, man, we need to use a sophisticated investigative technique. We've exhausted all our means this way. Now we want to try to do an undercover and wiretap same way, and that's what we did.
Yeah.
I they picked me, and then it was all about trying to figure out how to get up there, what my story was going to be, how I'm going to fit in,
Hmm.
how am I going to meet them, and try to ingratiate myself into their group.
Yeah, man, that was my next question. What's your undercover story, and then how do you initially meet these guys?
For that one, I was a site survey specialist because my background is landscaping.
Mm.
My dad dropped out in the 10th grade, but back in the day before there were Home Depots and Lowe's and stuff like that, he had the third largest landscaping company in upstate South
Hmm.
Carolina. Um, so I knew that, but I mean, you're going to travel the United States as a landscaper,
Probably
you know
not.
what I mean? And you're going to be in Massachusetts landscaping where
Yeah,
where it's not snowing maybe like 2, 3 months out of the year or
sure,
not freezing. Um, so I went with site survey specialist because that's something that I could sell and I understood, and that allowed me a chance to travel and do work abroad. So that's kind
sure,
of the thing. And then the way I met them is I took the intelligence that the case team provided me, and we worked as a team, obviously. And then one night I decided we as a team we decided, look, I'm going to be at a bar that they frequent a lot. And when they come in, then hopefully we'll just start trying. I'll just start being me and see what happens. You swing and miss. All right, it's no harm, no foul.
who was the guy in the bar that night? I think you remember describing that you were like trying to get his attention.
His road name was Spanky.
Spanky.
And yeah, Spanky. And it didn't take long to get his attention. Number one, uh, I'm I'm 6'4", two whatever. I was probably like 280 and whatever I was at that point. Um, but listen to this accent. That's a South Carolina accent. So
Hmm.
you're in a Boston or in a Brockton or Taunton, Massachusetts, basically Boston bar, and you start talking. Well, the first thing everybody says is where you from. So you go to that bar. I've been to the bar several times. There's some locals that I've run into, talked to the waitress, whatever. So when he comes in, I'm over doing what I do. We're a group of people. We're all laughing, telling jokes, and the intel on him was that he liked to be the center of attention, and he liked to be surrounded by big guys. He liked to have that kind of persona. And it wasn't long before he yells over to me and says, "Hey, where the F are you from?" And then we start kind of going. I said some stupid joke back, and I can't remember if he sent a drink over to me first or I sent one over to him, and then we start talking. And sooner or later, I was invited to one of their get-togethers,
Yeah,
like
I
a
was about to
Northeast
say,
regional.
how long did it take from and did you know like when they're walking to the bar, are they wearing their colors? Are they, you know,
Hmm.
they are. So
Yeah.
automatically they're with, the Outlaws at that point. Like, did you have a time frame? Hey, it's gonna take me 3 months to get in with them. Do you slow play it, or was this like basically y'all meet one night and the next week you're going to one of their get-togethers?
Well, it's definitely not as fast as like street level drug buys, right? Because you can do a buy
Hmm.
bust or a reversal. That's where I'll go up to buy, and as soon as I buy, everybody rushes in, or they come to buy from me, and as soon as they pull out the money,
Yep.
as soon as they let you know that it's going to be an exchange for criminal activity, then everybody rushes in. This is different. You're planning, you're doing the long game here, and whatever I say on day one, if it's 2 years later, it needs to match what's going on 2 years
Hmm.
later. Um, so the where were you? I forgot what you
Was
said.
like how long did it take from you to meet
Oh,
them
yeah.
that night and then for you to get introduced to or go to one of their get-togethers?
It didn't take that long. It was actually the first night I met him. But
Wow.
that is Spanky being a braggadocious guy who's like, "Hey, you come here, you want to come to the Lobster Fest, you back in town. Here's my card. You call any of these three numbers, you tell them you're my guy and you get to come." Um, but yeah, that was a little wild. But you mentioned did they wear their colors in there, and that was one thing that was a little wrong on the intelligence that was
Mm.
provided to me. Um, they said that they couldn't wear their colors in the bar, and I was like, okay, well that'll make things easier. I mean, it's just some dudes at a bar. It was a strip club, but I've kind of a tattooed guy sitting next to a tattooed guy drinking whiskey, listening to heavy metal, looking at what you're looking at. But when they walked in, they were all wearing their colors. But you have to know that I already knew a lot
Hmm.
of them because I've seen their pictures because the case team has been working this and they're like, okay, this is Spanky, this is so and so, this is
Hmm.
so and so. So as they're walking in, I'm like, okay, yeah, I know that one, I know that one. But when they walked in, they all had their colors on, which completely changes things because I mean, I don't. Do you walk up in a bar with this accent in the Northeast United States and go, "Hey, you You boys ride? You want to, you want to get ride? You know, I'd probably get smacked in the face. Get out of
with
here.
with I mean it's interesting though because like you can meet anybody and they could be in a biker gang, they could be whatever, and like they're not going to invite you to start doing illegal shit with them. You know, how do you introduce that you're down to start like doing some of the illegal stuff they're doing?
Um, a lot of times on an undercover, I mean, for me personally, I'm trying to get my backstory right for the
Hmm.
right approach. And there's been many undercovers I went in, I wasn't the right guy. I wasn't the right guy for the job, or that wasn't the right target for me because they didn't bite and they didn't like me, and I'm out. But that could take months, it could take whatever. And I
Hmm.
don't want to rush anything because um, I want it to be real. I
Yeah.
mean, it needs to be real. It needs to feel real and look real. But
With
yeah.
with the Outlaws, what is your story of like what you've been doing illegally?
So first I make friends, and then once those relationships start building, I mean, some of them were, I mean, right off the bat, they're like, "Hey man, what's going on? Who are you?" I'm like, "I'm Scott," and they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" "Texas." So they start calling me Tex. They're like, "Hey Tex, where are you? What part of Texas?" I'm like, "I'm on the border." "Hey man, how much can you get a kilo of cocaine for?" That's the first question, and I'm like, "Well, I'm on the border. It's
Actually.
about 13 grand, you know." Yeah. So there's some that are like that, that just assume you're already involved in criminal activity, but it may be that I buy something from them. But what happened in this case is they eventually learned, as I portrayed it, that I was a high-ranking member of an international theft ring, and I moved stolen goods into Mexico for whatever, because it was very fact-based, because that happened all the time at least at that
Yeah.
time with the cartel.
Because you've known it, you've been working the border, so you
Hmm.
that's like right up your alley with everything you know. With with the like what do you tell them you're moving? You're not moving drugs, you're just moving like stolen goods.
Yeah, I just said stolen goods. I let them see a load I had where I paid a guy, kind of thing, and then it started with them. On their scale of
Hmm.
criminal activity, pretty light. They would report a vehicle stolen, so they get the insurance money, but they would sell the vehicle to me at a stolen value price.
Dang.
And as far as they knew, I was taking it to Mexico. That's how it started. And you gotta, of course, I'm not saying all biker clubs are doing criminal activity or every member of a biker club's doing criminal activity, but this particular chapter, out of like 13 plus outlaws, maybe like one and a half had a job. One had a towing company. The
Dang.
other one was a tattoo artist and piercer, but I don't think he worked full time. Everybody else was thugging it. I mean, it was home invasions,
Dang.
carjackings, robberies, beat downs, dope, a lot of dope, and that's that's why that case team was really working that
Hmm.
that group.
With you talk a lot about your wife Kara in the book and on other interviews, but like for you personally, you're running these cases. You are deep in it with these guys, and you talk about your personal relationship with a lot of them, and like you talk about how they could just depending on who they are as a kid or how they grow up. I mean, they could easily be you, or you could easily be them in a sense. But how do you mentally battle like, hey, I'm in it deep with these outlaws. We're doing illegal activity, and then I'm gonna go home and be with my wife and I think eventually some daughters too.
Yes, it's not easy, especially in the beginning of my career. I mean, you get the training. I help put on the training. I mean,
Hmm.
I'm iron sharpens iron. My peers and my mentors and even the people that I've been blessed to mentor, we're always trying to. You should be trying to sharpen your skills and be as good as you can be. But it wasn't easy. I would say towards the end of my career, it was easier for me to disconnect
Hmm.
because I'm just used to it. I mean, I think by the time I retired, I had like 7 or 8 phones.
Dang.
But it was just, it became normal to me. I mean, I'd see that phone ring and I'd see the picture that shot up on it, and I go, okay, I'm this Scott, this guy. Hey, what's
Dang.
going on, man? And I got better at it, but I clearly was not good at it in the beginning. And there were some hairy moments there. There were some tough times with the family. And I'm a workaholic. It wasn't just the undercover. I mean, the book is about undercover stuff, but
Hmm.
as we've already talked, I was a case agent. I mean,
Yeah.
I was on SWAT. I ran the tactical training for the division. I ran the firearms, or assisted with the firearms. I ran the tactics. I ran the active shooter response and defensive tactics because I'm a workaholic. I love doing a lot
Yeah.
of things, and I
You
had to
said
learn how
yes
to
to
balance
basically
that.
everything.
I volunteered for a lot. Yeah. Yeah. And again, I say again as if you know. I apologize. I have been doing a lot of interviews. The again's for my head.
No, you got
Uh,
it.
but you're only required to be a case agent when you come
Hmm.
in the FBI, unless they say, okay, you're full-time SWAT, you're a full-time firearms instructor, something like that. But you're a case agent. All this other stuff I did, that's voluntary. I mean, I volunteered for it and I loved it and I did it. So all that stuff I did that was done to me, I did it. It was
Hmm.
me. I didn't have to do it. I'm an idiot. So.
With with the relationship with some of the guys that you're infiltrating, you talk about how some of them are on the phone telling them that they love you and you kind of love them back, sort of stuff, man. Like, how is that like balancing that relationship with these guys that eventually you're gonna take to jail?
That is the tough part of doing undercover. And as I said, you put on training, you're trying to sharpen yourself, you're
Hmm.
around your peers, but I'm still human. If I'm hanging with somebody for 2 years and I'm in your home and I've built this relationship. We are friends. I
Hmm.
mean, you don't know I'm an FBI undercover agent, but sometimes you bond. At
Yeah.
least I did. I won't put that on everybody else. Maybe everybody's different. Maybe some
Yep.
people don't experience that at all who are doing undercover work, but I did. And yeah, I think one of the things you're talking about is the guy that I was the closest to in that 2 years of the Outlaws case was a guy named Scott.
Hmm.
And the last words I spoke to that guy were, we were on the phone. It was back in the Nextel days. And he said, his last words to me were, I love you, brother. And my last words to him were, I love you too.
Hmm.
And that's you need to be able to know how you're going to do this and rationalize it in your mind so that it doesn't have an adverse impact on your psyche.
Sure.
Because at the end of the day, you are building a relationship that you're going to betray, especially if you're getting evidence on them, right? But on another token, in the book, I mentioned that I've had people call me after they've been arrested, and they
Hmm.
know I'm the undercover, and they just call the number they have for me, and I would leave my undercover phone on. I wouldn't just shut it off at the end of a case, and they'd call me and be like, "Hey, it's your boy. I love you. I know you was just doing your job," and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, it is. I'm just doing my job. You know,
Yeah, totally.
so many years in law enforcement. Um, if I arrested somebody, I would tell them, I'm like, look,
Yeah.
I don't think, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think you're a bad person. I'm not saying I disagree with what you did. I'm just saying you're an adult.
Hmm.
You chose to break the law and you got caught. So here we are. Let's just go from there. It's nothing personal, you know?
Yeah. I heard you describe undercover as I think relationships you're building to betray. And that's
Yes.
just like a crazy thing to think about, but it's so true. That would be difficult for me. Like I feel like I would like make friends and then I'm like, damn, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. But with the outlaw case, one of the main stories in that one is when you're in the basement, I think with Clothesline is his name.
Hmm.
And I think you are ending or getting close to the end of the case at this point. But talk me through that evening and what went through your head down there in that basement.
That was a year and a half in. And by that time, I had done what they perceived to be many criminal acts with them. And I had ingratiated myself. I mean, I was trusted, but the FBI, me, and the team, we upped the ante. And because, as I said in the very beginning, somebody was already asking me, how much can you get a kilo of dope for?
Mm-hmm.
So here we are at a year and a half. They're predicated. There's no entrapment issues whatsoever. We've got them dealing dope. We know they sell dope. We know they buy dope, and we came up with a plan to give them an opportunity to help protect the drug load. My
Mm-hmm.
truck drivers were going to be bringing a drug load up, and cartel member with them, and then cartel members with them, and then that dope would be moved to another buyer. and they would help kind of protect it. And what we didn't realize is by upping the ante, it made it that the operation, the deal, made it up the chain.
Mm.
To my understanding, all the way to the top of the Outlaws, which at the time the leader was Milwaukee Jack, the national president. And it came back down that I needed to be checked. I didn't know that. The team didn't know that. The United States Attorney's Office wanted as much recording evidence as they could get, especially in the clubhouse with multiple members talking about the drug deal.
Hmm.
And knowing about it or participating in it along with other criminal activity. So I go to the clubhouse that night, the night before the deal, because the president, Joe Dogs, was like, "Hey, come to the clubhouse." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." I thought it was just going to be another night like we were going out partying or something. So I get there. And for the listeners that don't know, when you go into that clubhouse, there's more than one deadbolt. There's a metal bar across the door with welded hooks. It's a pretty heavily fortified door.
Hmm.
And once you're in there, I mean, that's the way the door is. And I'm inside. I've been in there plenty of times. There's only one door I've never been in. And I'm in the clubhouse telling jokes like I normally do. But what I don't see is that if I'm looking at you and I crack a joke and you're laughing and then I turn my head away from you, you immediately go stone face.
Mm.
I didn't see that. The recording device saw it, but it
Dang.
wasn't doing me any good because I didn't see it. Um, and then there was also an outlaw in the back warming up, getting ready. So I think everything's going to be normal. Clothesline comes up and says, "Hey, Tex, you got a minute?" And I said, "Yeah." And we go in that door I'd never been in. And it's a very tight stairwell, steep, go down into a dark, very, very small basement. I couldn't even stand up straight. Probably could touch the wall on both sides. Well, Clothesline's in front of me. Chocolate Scott comes behind me. They brandish their weapons. They let me see they're armed. I see a rope. Um, I'm looking for plastic. I didn't see plastic. If there was plastic on the ground in the in the underworld of criminals, if you see plastic on the ground, it's not a good thing. If they're
No.
telling you to stand on top of plastic or put out plastic that you need to stand on, that's a bad thing. Um, so I didn't see plastic, but they let me know I wasn't free to leave.
Hmm.
And my supposedly close friend Clothesline tells me that I need to write down my full name, my date of birth, all kinds of information, and I need to take all my clothes off because he was looking for a wire. The problem is I was wired to the hilt, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh no. And this is a year and a half in. And I did have a guy tell me when I first started going into the Outlaws, he said, "Man, be careful." He goes, "These are the kind of groups." And he said, "You'll be in for a year. Next thing you know, you're standing in the middle of the clubhouse naked and they're asking you, 'Who are you?'" And I don't want to say I got lax or the team got lax.
Hmm.
I don't know. So I go down there and he's telling me to take off. I write down my name, this stuff. I forget my middle name because of the stress of the moment. And if you have an adrenaline dump or a panic situation, normally your body does the same thing. You get auditory exclusion, so everything sounds like you're underwater. It's going whoosh,
Hmm.
whoosh. Everything's slowing down. You're like, oh, it feels like it's like 30 minutes and it's probably two. Um, and you get time dilation. Everything you see is in frames. Click, click, click. Hamstrings get rubbery and you sweat. I feel like I'm starting an Eminem song. My palms are sweaty. But that pretty much that. And I finally remember my middle name and I write it down. Well, I take off all my clothes. And I'm not going to disclose how many devices I had or where they were at.
Hmm.
But I take off all my clothes, take off my boots, and he checks me. And then I think I'm done. By the way, while this is going on, we're still talking, and he's because I'm freaking out. And he's looking at me, and because we know each other for a year and a half, if you could see the look on my face, what I'm really saying is, "Tell me I'm going to be okay." And it looked to me like his response to me was, "You're going to be okay." However, he doesn't know that I'm an undercover agent who's
Hmm.
wired. So he even tells me at one point while he's doing that, he goes, "Hey man, trust me, if somebody accused me of being a Fed, I'd smash them in the effing mouth." And I said, "I'm not happy." And he said, "I wouldn't be either." And I think he's done. I pull my pants back up. I think I get my boots on, and then he grabs a piece of clothing that I'd
Hmm.
taken off, and he starts going through it really slow, just kneading it. And he said, right when he grabbed it, he was kind of joking. He said, "Hey, I'm not going to find anything in here I don't want to, like some naked pictures of my old lady." And he kind of laughs, and I kind of laugh like, because I'm freaking out.
Hmm.
And so he's going down the jacket and he's kneading it with his hands, and I don't even know I do it, but if you ever hear the recording, you can hear me literally go, because I'm watching it because I'm like, how do I, even if I tried to fight my way out of that basement and I don't get shot, once I get upstairs, there's like 10 more outlaws. It's just it's futile, right?
Yeah.
Futile, right? Um, so he misses it. He pretty much looks right at it and misses it. And now I go kind of into work mode and nervous talking, and I live to fight another day. I'll make it out of there. But that night, man, I didn't hardly sleep at all. If
Yeah,
I did, it's
totally.
probably like 30 minutes. But people always ask, what would I have said if he'd have found something?
Hmm.
And I still remember it. I teach it all the time. I'm like, if my first response probably, if he would have said, "What is this?" My first response, because I'm a jovial idiot, I probably would have said, like, I don't know, some naked pictures of your old lady, and to see if that bought me some time or him to just laugh it off. But the only other thing I had to say, Sam, and I remember it like it was yesterday, is I would have said, "Hey, man, the gig's up. I'm an undercover FBI agent. I can walk out of here and we can see each other in court, or all hell's going to break loose." That's what was in my head. But the only problem was, and for me, it probably would have been a bluff because, to my understanding, most of the times, if not all the times I've been in that clubhouse, my cover team couldn't hear me, whether it be walls or whatever, or the equipment back, however,
Hmm.
20 years ago. And um, what I found out was when I went to turn in my equipment later that night, what I found out was is that the two task force officers who were on the case team, Sergeant Higginbottom out of Massachusetts State Troopers and Detective Cummings out of Brockton PD, they, whatever that first interaction when I got to the clubhouse made their spidey senses go off, and they had actually listened. They heard everything that was going on, and they had
Damn.
radioed back up to Boston because really that was the beginning of the shift. Even though it was like 7 or 8 o'clock at night, that's the beginning of the shift. And they had radioed back to everybody in Boston. Everybody was coming down, blue lights and sirens. Um, if something bad would have happened, probably just to avenge my death, right?
Yeah.
But when
All
I
hell would
found
have
that
broken
out,
loose. Yeah.
yeah, when I found that out, I was like, wow. So what they had done is they were listening to me the entire time. They could hear my voice. You can clearly hear it in the recording. I do not sound like this. My throat's tighter. My voice is a lot higher. You can hear the nervousness. But they heard it and they knew me well enough to know if something really bad was happening,
Hmm.
and they were ready. They vested up and they had all their gear on, and they were, because they'd been in that clubhouse. They knew the door was heavily fortified. Their plan was to drive into the cinder block wall right next to the door and breach it that way. I mean, it was a plan. I don't know if it would have worked, but it was a plan.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't believe it because
Yep.
you don't want to say, hey, that case is worth my life or worth my family or worth anybody getting hurt, because
Hmm.
it's not. But we live to fight another day on that one. Now, the
Yeah,
big
man.
thing is that I talk about in the book, because I cover my faith a lot through it. But
Yep.
that night, I bought my wife a burner phone so I could call her no matter what time. At 5 in the morning, 7 in the morning, I'd be like, "Hey, it's me. Love you. Just want you to know I'm done. I'm going to the hotel. I'll
Yeah.
call you when I wake up." So that night when I called, my wife answered, and the first thing she said was, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she said, "I don't know why, but I was driving with our daughters tonight in McAllen, Texas." And she said, "At such and such time, and I just got this overwhelming feeling. And I pulled over on the side of the road and started praying for you." And I matched it up. And when she got that feeling is when I was being stripped in the basement.
Damn. That's so
Yeah.
wild. With uh with the outlaw case, you talk through and it's great detail in the book with you not getting much sleep, you're working cases, you're overworked, you're eventually at the point where you almost break down. and you call it a timeout, like where the FBI gives you a timeout. But how does that case end up getting not resolved, but how does it end up ending? How do you take down Spanky? Do you take down Clothesline? Like how do they eventually go in for their arrest?
Well, I did crash. And the reason was not just the case. It
Hmm.
was the totality of circumstances. As I said earlier in the podcast, I'm an idiot. I'm a workaholic. I love doing a ton of stuff, and I didn't realize that I wasn't balancing it well.
Hmm.
I put the warrior mentality to everything in my life, and it didn't work out too well for me. I mean, I wasn't getting enough sleep. I wasn't getting my days off. I would just eat them so management wouldn't be mad at me. Um, just doing too much and not taking care of myself. So when I did have that physical exhaustion, mental crash, I I called into our psychological assessment unit called Safeguard in the FBI. They are responsible for assessing undercovers and many other aspects of tough work in the FBI. But I called them and they came down and did an assessment and they said, "Look, man, you they diagnosed me as overassigned and they're like, you're not going back on the undercover, but you can stay on the phone." So we're at the end anyway. We've
Hmm.
gotten pretty much everything we want. There was one trickling thing that a guy who kind of came in at the end. He was an outlaw that had gotten out of prison. He had heard about me. First thing he meets me, he wants to do business. So even they let me stay on the phone. So now I'm down in McAllen, and the story I said was they knew I was married. I said I was getting a divorce, and I had to relocate my wife and kids to El Paso. And then once that's done, I said I was coming to Massachusetts. But I couldn't leave them without getting them relocated, or I wouldn't be able to sleep.
Hmm.
Wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror. So I'm on the phone, and this guy, Tim, calls me and says, "Hey, man, you know what I mean, when are you coming back up here?" I said, "I'm not sure." He's like, "Man, you know what kind of business I'm in?" I'm like, "No." He said, "I'm in that magic powder business." I'm like, "Okay," because he already knew that drug deal we did had 40 kilos of cocaine and 1,000 pounds of weed, which weed's not that big of a deal anymore, but 1,000 pounds of weed in
There's a lot of weed.
2007, yeah. Um, so he says, "Hey," he tells me on a recorded phone call, "Look, if you can get me a kilo at 18,000 a kilo, I can buy 10 of them right now." He also tells me he has some nice stolen vehicle or nice vehicles he wanted to report stolen. They get a lot of money. There was like a 7 Series BMW that was around 100 grand and a Hummer, all this stuff. So I'd let the case team know, and they're like, "Yeah, we'd like to do that." So I broker the deal. I have undercover truck drivers show up to meet Tim to pick up the BMW and things like that. I'm even on the phone. You can, if you ever get the court exhibits and you can hear the recording, you hear me. The one undercover hands the phone to me, text, and I'm talking to Tim, and I'm like, "Hey, he's like, hey, I'm going to report the car stolen Friday." I'm like, "Don't do that. Give me one extra day. Make it Saturday." Then I tell the undercover how much money to pay him for the vehicles. When they are loading those vehicles, to my understanding, Tim asked them if they could get 10 kilos for 18 apiece, and they said yes. And that was the takedown. When they showed up to deliver those what he thought he was going to be getting 10 kilos,
Hmm.
they arrested him, and that was the takedown.
Dang. How do you feel when a case like that ends?
Every one of them's a little different, but I mean, it's my job. That case, I mean, I'd been through a lot. My body and mind was going through a lot.
Hmm.
Again, not just because of the case, it's because of where I was at in my life and what I'd been doing. Um, it's a real feeling, you know.
Hmm.
I mean, and by the way, there's also pressure because I'm a tactical guy. I'm on SWAT. I'm doing things like that. But I'm now drawing diagrams of buildings and homes that I've been in for other SWAT teams and arrest teams that are going to be
Hmm.
hitting all these places. And I'm thinking in my back of my mind, man, if I get something wrong and somebody gets hurt because I gave bad information, that's more stress
Yeah,
too.
that's stress, man. That's crazy. With with your career, you mentioned earlier on when we were talking, yeah, Outlaws is one of the bigger cases people know about, but you worked murder for hires, neo-Nazis, white supremacists, KKK, like, and it's weird for me, like, until I really heard you talk about that sort of stuff, like I knew it exists. I think that's how a lot of people are like, we kind of know what's out there, but we don't really know the inner workings of it or like the details of it or really how shitty people how bad of people they really are with with your career, you end up moving to, I think, Tennessee eventually, but, you know, do you have a say in the cases you want to work next? Or I think you also talk about how it just kind of fits who you look like and, your personality sort of stuff. But like, what are the next cases you decide to go on after the Outlaws case?
Well, first, again, undercover is voluntary. They
Hmm.
can't make you work a case. And even if I'm in a case and I'm like, I'm not feeling it, I'm out. They can't make me continue it.
Mm.
Now I'm probably going to get blackballed or I'm not going to get a lot of cases if I walk away from one, but
Yeah.
um, so I'm always looking. Once I did my timeout and I could show the safeguard unit that I'd taken the right steps to make things right in my life. I figured out, I mean, I wanted to know how did I get here? What's going on? And how can I stop this from happening again?
Hmm.
Because I don't want it to happen again. And from there, it's kind of where the threat is. And then if I can fit in that threat, the
Hmm.
biker gangs, they kind of started trickling off. You didn't see a lot of biker undercovers going on. And by the way, if you've done 2 years in the Outlaws, what other biker clubs can you really work? You can't work the Outlaws again. You can't work anybody that's friends with the Outlaws
Hmm.
because all it would take is one regional meet, and there's a very good chance somebody could look at me and go, "That's Tex," you know.
Yeah, totally.
Um, so you look at where the threats kind of change, and then if I can fit in, I mean, I might just be helping somebody else on their case. I
Yep.
might, I might just come and be muscle for them in the room, or ride with them, or maybe I'm the truck driver.
Yeah, it's
But
crazy.
I just started looking, and if I see something, I kind of apply, and sometimes I get them, sometimes I don't.
With uh with me being in Greenville, you worked I think a murder for hire case for the Michelin plant.
Yes.
Talk me through that case.
That one began with some other undercovers. I can't remember what happened. I don't know if the target or I don't know what happened, but
Hmm.
I'd already done several cases in South Carolina. So, like I said earlier, the Columbia Division is the headquarters division. So the supervisor over the domestic terrorism squad already had my number, and I'd already done some undercovers for him. And he'd call me up and go, "Hey, can you hop on this one? Hey, can you hop on this one?" And as long as they didn't conflict, I mean, I went. There were several times. There was one I can't remember who it was, but I drove to Greenville from Tennessee, Greenville Anderson area. I probably drove there like 3 times. Nothing ever happened. I'd show up and the person I'm supposed to bump was late, didn't meet. I sit in the parking lot all day talking to agents and task force officers, and then I get in my truck and drive back home. But that one, the guy, the target, originally wanted to blow up the Michelin plant because he'd lost his job. And then he narrowed it down to a black family, a black couple. And the way it was explained to me is, look, here's the thing that you can be introduced. This guy's going to get your number. He's very sketchy. He doesn't want to talk. He only wants to text. And I'm thinking, okay, he's sketchy. And we start texting each other. And I mean, it wasn't long. I don't know how quick it was, but I'm trying to be all, nonchalant.
Hmm.
No, no, no. Hey, so and so, you know what I do, kind of thing. And he sends me an emoji of like a bomb. Boom. This is what I want to do. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess we're not talking too secretive. And
Dang.
the way that one ended is he had requested a bomb. He wanted a bomb that could be set off it would go off when the box opened and light hits it. In other words, you deliver it in the mail or
Hmm.
however. The said couple, hopefully on his what he's hoping is they go inside the house, open the box, boom. I mean, we got into details about how big of a radius the explosion would be. Is it enough to get them? Not enough to kill neighbors and stuff. And I went to deliver the bomb to him, and there was a snafu with meeting up with him,
Hmm.
but the bomb was delivered to him the next day, and he was arrested.
Damn. That's crazy, man. Like you watch movies and stuff and you see murder for hires, but like still for me it's just like crazy that shit really happens in real life. With with some of the neo-Nazis and the white supremacist stuff, you know, that sort of stuff blows my mind. Like where do you think they're getting this influence from? And what's the threat today with like those types of groups?
Um, was a lot of questions in there, so you may have to remind me some of
I
them. In my
got you.
head, that's what I'm thinking. I'm going, that's a lot to answer. So the neo-Nazi, a lot of these, any extremist view, whether you're radical Islamist or black separatist or whatever,
Hmm.
a lot of these are being radicalized online. You see a
Mm.
lot of young people um, getting radicalized online. So you got these phones that will allow you to go into all kinds of supposedly encrypted apps, Discord, 4chan, 8chan, 12chan,
Mm-hmm.
Threema, Riot. Good Lord, there's probably way more now. Some have probably shut down, and now there's more out there. But uh, you get in these chat groups, and
Mm-hmm.
you just see people spewing. Like I was in one group for 5 months, and I read every single post because I didn't want to miss anything. I knew I had the access to it. I know I'm the
Mm-hmm.
undercover, and I didn't want to miss anything that could be a threat on my watch. I didn't want anybody to get hurt, and I didn't want the reason for anybody getting hurt to be because I missed something.
Mm-hmm.
But after 5 months of reading thousands upon thousands of just horrific anti-Semitic, anti-black uh, propaganda and posts, it was evident that, as sad as it is, that's First Amendment protected freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not gonna take any steps to do violence. We don't investigate on just on you hating and just on an ideology. We can't do that. But if you're doing things or it's reported that you may be getting ready to do things, well, maybe we can do a case.
Yeah.
But the particular there's different belief systems in white supremacy. One of the common ones over the last numerous years is called Christian identity, not to be confused with being a Christ follower or a Christian. They take the Garden of Eden story in the Bible and they twist the living crap out of it to fit their ideology.
Mm-hmm.
In their ideology, Jesus is a white man. He's not even Jewish. And in the Garden of Eden, the fruit of the forbidden tree would be uh, a sexual act. The serpent would be a man of color, aka Satan,
Mm-hmm.
and that the sexual act was Satan sleeping with Eve, and the offspring would be Cain and on down. They consider that the mud race or non-white.
Got it.
But the procreation between Adam and Eve would have been Abel, and that would be the pure white race. That's just
Damn.
one crazy twist thing there. But the groups that, sorry, the group that we got into, the base, they were a neo-Nazi group that is referred to as accelerationist group. And at that time, there were really only a couple. I think Adam Waffen might have been the first big one.
Okay.
Um, but this is their belief system. Their belief system is this: there is no political solution to save the white race. They they believe that society is either going to collapse on its own or from man-made events, and they want to speed that collapse up. So their idea is not standing on a corner, waving signs, yelling racial
Mm-hmm.
slurs and stuff. They're like, that's stupid. It does nothing and it makes you a target.
Mm-hmm.
Their idea is guerrilla warfare. Hey, let's go derail a train. Let's go take down a power grid. Let's poison a water system. Let's murder left people from the left, um, anybody who's anti-fascist. So when I hear, I've done some interviews and they're like, they say, hey, with Trump getting back in, some people try to tie the rise, and I said, well, not for accelerationism. I said they don't like Trump either.
Mm.
They want the collapse of society.
Damn,
And
that's crazy.
by the way, if you're a neo-Nazi, that is a neo-Nazi. That means that you love Hitler and you want to you want society to be Hitler's Germany. Well, it's kind of hard to like Donald Trump if you have
Mm-hmm.
that belief system when his son-in-law is 100% Jewish,
Sure.
which makes his grandkids Jewish.
It's
So,
crazy. I heard you in one of your stories talk about one of the guys that I mean, they get so brainwashed and get so in the rabbit hole with these things. They think like Hitler's still alive, like
yeah.
certain things like that. With which also blew my mind was they idolized Dylan Ruth, who
Oh, yes.
committed the criminal act, the killing of in a church down in Charleston. Like that's just crazy.
He's referred to as a saint. They all of the white supremacy massacre shooters, active shooters, yeah, they have a leaderboard, and they refer to them as saints. So usually, especially in the tactical world, we never say their name
Hmm.
because we don't want to give them any more publicity.
Sure.
But you said Dylan Roof, so I'll say Dylan Roof. That they look at that and they say, hey, it's Saint Roof Day,
Mm.
and that would be the day he did kill those victims in Charleston. And it would be, Saint Breivik, Saint Terence. But on the leaderboard, it has, who has the most kills, So it'll be like 77 and zero. There's
Damn.
that guy. And then Dylan's in there at, I think it was 8 or 9 and
Hmm.
zero. And at the bottom it says, what will you do to make the leaderboard?
Damn, that's so crazy.
Yeah, it's
With
sick.
yeah, it is. I mean, it just like for me, somebody that just like lives a normal life, like you hear about this shit, but like it's wild to think about, with these
Here's
groups are
what
actually out there. It's like,
and here's what I tell a lot of people, because I've talked to people from all facets of life, especially since doing this book
hmm
thing. Um, I just want you to understand, as sad as it is, I want you to understand that there are evil people on this planet
hmm
that want to do evil things to good people. And it's been that way pretty much since the beginning of time. I'm not trying to scare you and you walk around in fear all the time. I don't do that. I'm an optimist. I'm a glasses half full guy, but just be aware and
hmm
know that in my world and with my peers, my mentors and the people, those first responders out there, you want them and you need
yeah.
them.
When you
Um,
look at domestic terrorism as a whole right now, like what are some of the main groups that oppose the most threat?
that's a hard question to answer, and I'll explain why.
Hmm
Not without, I'm not trying to throw law enforcement or my former agency, the FBI, under the bus, but it may sound like I am. The the domestic terrorism,
hmm
in my opinion of what I've worked, I do believe that the accelerationists are more dangerous based on their belief system. Um, and they're always training and they're shooting again. I'm going off the experience of the group that I infiltrated. I mean,
hmm
I'm listening to a guy. Sometimes when he says it, he gets teary-eyed, but he is saying that when the D-Day happens and that racial holy war starts, if you are not fascist, that automatically makes you anti-fascist, and the penalty is death. And I'm listening to him tell me on more than one occasion that he's going to have to put a bullet in the back of his father's head. He will give his father a chance. As much as he loves his father, he will give him a chance to become fascist. But if he says no, he's going to have to kill him. That's that belief system, and it's crazy. Um, but under the domestic terrorism realm could also be Antifa. It could
hmm
also be BLM, not the belief,
Sure.
but the bad side of it. But we didn't work a whole lot of those cases as
hmm
the FBI. So when I say I'm not sure, that's because we don't have the coverage, or we didn't when I was in.
Yep.
And there's a lot of political pressure. I'll speak personally for me. I finished my career working domestic terrorism as a case agent as well. And I came in after meeting with the local sheriff's office, and I came back in, and I'm like, hey man, I might have a lead on a new investigation against a Black Lives Matter person. And I remember it wasn't really pushback, but I remember a supervisor going, "Oof," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oof," and he's like, man, headquarters really looks closely at those. I said, as they should every case. I said, I don't,
Yeah.
I'm colorblind. I don't care if you're breaking
Totally.
the law and you're a threat to, and you fall under the umbrella that I'm investigating. I'm going to try to work it.
With
But go ahead.
no,
Sorry.
with a lot in the news too is like gangs from, Venezuela or
Mhm.
gangs from, Central South America. Would you consider those domestic terrorism? Or are they categorized different?
Probably not. And there's a lot to go into that. There is no domestic terrorism statute federally. There is no domestic terrorism charge. International terrorism, we have like material support you can
Hmm
charge somebody with. We don't have that on the domestic terrorism side, and that's why you see, like, I did an Aryan Nation case. I was the case agent, but I ended up partnering up with a DEA agent because that was the same person moving the dope was moving dope through my Aryan Nation targets
Got it.
and his people. So we work together. So you arrest 44 people. Are they all Aryan Nation? No. Are they all white supremacists? No. A lot of them were,
Hmm
but there's not a single domestic terrorism charge in there because we don't have one.
Yeah. With
Um, so with the gangs you were talking about, that's more transnational organized crime.
hmm
That is what I worked for the majority of my career, whether it be Colombian drugs, being on the border, gangs. I say criminal enterprise. That
Yeah.
encompasses all that. But that would be more of that. Now, if they came out with something and they said, "Hey, within the United States, this is a domestic threat,"
hmm
if it depends on how they would write that law, whether it would
Got it.
include something like Tren de Aragua or MS-13 or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, it's because I mean, for me, if it's like it's happening in the U.S., it's somewhat domestic terrorism. They live here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With your career, when you reflect on I think it's 26, 20, I know 25 plus years as an undercover and FBI agent and in law enforcement, how do you feel about your career now that you've reflected on it a good bit? You've been out for years. Like, how do you feel?
I'm proud, and I'm not disconnected. I'm still an instructor.
Hmm.
I'm with an organization that is called Alert. It is the national standard for teaching law enforcement active shooter response, along with many other classes.
Hmm.
Uh, so I still instruct and I still get out there and do that. But I'm happy. I mean, who knows? I may bond back in to a local sheriff's office and round it out to a solid 30 years in law enforcement. But uh, and I joke, I'm like, well, then I'd have to be a bouncer for one night because that'd be full circle. It'd be bouncer, cop, fed, cop, one at least 1 hour bouncing. Charge somebody a cover charge to walk in. That'll be $5. I'll be like, all right, I'm done. But I'm proud, it's not to say that I've done everything. I haven't. There are so many
Hmm.
men and women out there in law enforcement that have done way more undercover than me, done more harrowing things than me. But I I just remember they always say you'll know when it's time for you to go or
Hmm.
you're ready to go. The cutoff age at the FBI is 57. I totally saw myself working on 57 and hopefully maybe having a specialty that would allow me to get a special extension for a year or two, right? But at 50 years old, I was like, I just remember being in Arizona putting on training. I can't remember what the conversation was. I remember we were having a few adult beverages with dinner, and I just remember it hit me like I'm like, man, I'm satisfied. Not saying I've done everything, but literally in my head, I'm like, if I go back next week, it's just going to be the same thing, and I'm
Hmm.
gonna and COVID actually they wouldn't let us work. They made us stay home, and that kind of gave me some insight of what retirement could look like. And I punched out at 50. So
Yeah.
I'm proud. I'm proud of my career.
Yeah, as you should be, man. I'm proud you're from Greenville. I hardly even know you.
South Kakalaki.
That's right, baby. As we close up here, you talk about the ceremony, your retirement ceremony, and all the people that came together. And talk me through the professional wrestler. I think he's like the governor there, and
He's
he
the mayor.
mayor. He
Mayor.
names it Scott Payne Day.
Yeah, he
Um,
did.
but talk me through that night, and just like as you see all those people come together and kind of celebrate your career a little bit.
It was very surreal. I mean, it's an emotional day anyway, right? I mean, you're handing in all your stuff. You're handing in your badge, your creds. You're being walked out of the office. You can't drive the bureau car home. Your buddy drops you off. I had some good friends that they have a very nice venue and they let us use that. What surprised me is the people that came from out of town.
Mm.
I'm talking about supervisors from Seattle, Washington, came to Tennessee. I'm talking supervisors and personnel from headquarters. FBI came down. It was very special. I had friends from South Carolina that came. It was a very, very good evening. I mean, we had some comical things like we had a bar, and I mean, my nickname was Big Country, and then we
Hmm.
had some other sayings, but that would be the drink. If you wanted the Big Country, it was a Jack and Coke. If you wanted the and I'm not going to say it on here, but there were some other names on there that might
Sure.
be like Woodford Reserve, Neat, or something. But it was a good night. It was very, very cool. What I really loved seeing is my family just so ecstatic and overjoyed.
Hmm.
But yes, Glenn Jacobs, the professional wrestler Kane, I can call him a buddy. The dude's actually brilliant. It's not people hear you got a wrestler in politics. I'm like, no, this isn't Jesse the Body Ventura, man. This dude. Not only is he huge and strong, he's very smart.
Hmm.
But yeah, he came, and the lieutenant governor of the state came, and the head of Tennessee Bureau of Investigation came, and Glenn did a proclamation and declared it Scott Payne Day. He called me
Hmm.
up and he goes, hey, come on up here. I got a surprise for you. And I said, are you going to choke slam me through a table? And he's like, I don't think you want that. And I go, I think I do. I'm like, punch out at 50, 28
Yeah,
year law
totally.
enforcement career, choke slam through a table by Kane. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
It'd be like your
Uh,
favorite linebacker, like
yeah,
spearing you through
yeah,
it, making
yeah.
a
Just
tackle or something.
20-yard start, man. Just hit me.
Yeah.
I know it's going to hurt. I don't have the calluses built up. It's going to hurt. But yeah, I remember looking over. And I didn't have glasses on, a wonderful thing of aging. But I'm looking and I'm seeing what he's reading, and I'm like, okay, he's reading my somewhat of my bio, and I'm looking and I'm going, and I get to the bottom of the sheet, and I said, does that say Scott Payne Day? And yeah, I had to bite my lip on that one. I was
Yeah,
like, I am
totally.
not going to cry in front of these people. Yeah, it was very, very special day. I don't know what
Now,
it means. I don't know if it only lasted 24 hours, but I got a piece of paper that says it's Scott Payne Day. So,
what what's your reception been like from the book?
well, very good. I mean, I was on Joe Rogan last week, so
It's
since
crazy,
then, yeah,
surreal.
yeah, right. Since then, things are looking good. I would say heavy majority,
Hmm.
90th percentile of the feedback has been very, very good. You're
As
gonna
it
have some
should,
stupid people on there, but I'm not gonna give them any
always.
attention. You're gonna have a hater that I'm not gonna give them any attention. It's like, hey, I don't, you didn't like me. You didn't like me when I was in the bureau. So what makes me think I can, it doesn't matter.
Certainly. Well, Scott, man, I just want to thank you obviously for your service. I mean, it's incredible. Your book is out. I'm gonna have the link in the show notes for people, but it's called, I think, Codename Pale Horse. I've
Yes.
listened to the whole thing. I'll tell you, I'm not a big reader. You got a great audio version, and it's
Thank
actually
you.
you that's
Yes, it is
reading
me.
it.
It's me.
It's awesome. I've been sending to
Did it
my.
come across all right? Because
It
man,
was great.
that was a little nerve-wracking because I'm having to I had to do verbatim because that Simon and Schuster's legal team has already gone through it. So I got to read verbatim. I'm like, I want to talk like I'm talking right now, but I had to read at a certain speed and talk right
You did
behind it.
great.
So, all right, we're good.
No,
Thank you.
and
I just,
I've
I knew it had to be better than some robotic voice saying, I was in the basement.
Oh man, I mean,
Scared.
it sells the whole story. Like it's like you can feel you in these moments. You know what I mean? Like with you saying it, like you can feel it in your voice. And I'll tell you, man, I maybe read 5 books my whole life, and I've finished your book in about 2 days. So,
Nice. We have a lot in common. I still remember some books from East Side. They're like, "Oh, you a big book reader?" I'm like, "Yeah, I remember Man's Search for Meaning. That was
yeah,
in the
exactly.
'80s. I was. I like a
Well,
Tom Clancy book every now and then. You know,
yeah, totally. And now that there's audiobooks, it makes it a lot easier for me.
that's
But
me.
nah, man, it's been incredible. And if anybody, I mean, these stories you have, and honestly, I probably have 100 more questions, 1,000 more questions. But it's absolutely incredible to hear the insight of somebody like yourself that has that career. It's fascinating. And again, thank you for your service, man. It's been absolutely incredible what you did for our country and who we are. But thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, man. It's been an honor.